Alright, next we're going to install the right side engine cover. There is a gasket on here, so that's a replacement part. Just be careful when you align this, you don't want to mess up the kickstart gear. There's a dowel pin in here that can be a little bit of a pain. There we go. Alright, so the cover bolts are all the same except for this one right here. The rest look like this. This one's a little bit longer and it goes into this part right here. All these cover bolts torqued to 106 inch-pounds, which is 8.8 foot-pounds. All right, so next we've got the friction plates and the steel plates, and we're gonna alternate. So start with the friction plate first. One thing you wanna do is make sure that these are well oiled or else they can seize. If you get a new set, it doesn't hurt to even soak them in oil overnight. But definitely make sure you at least put a nice bit of oil on them before you put them in. Make sure they're completely covered. Again, you don't want to get these in there and have them seize. A new clutch isn't that expensive, but pick them up for like anywhere from 80 to 150 bucks, but still. All right, next we can install the clutch actuator. So we've got the actuator arm with this lobe on it. So this actually faces in towards the motor over here on the opposite side. And the way it works is this rod goes through here and it sits in this lobe. So when you pull the clutch in, rotates in the lobe and actuates back and forth to engage and disengage the clutch. So put in the actuator arm first. Make sure it's all the way down in there. Face it right towards you. Actually, a little bit of oil on this arm doesn't hurt. So just add a little bit of oil to the length of it. And this one is bidirectional, so it's the same on both sides. It doesn't matter which way it goes. So you can slide that all the way in, and then you can move your clutch actuator, and you can see it right there. Moves in and out. It's in the lobe there that it should be. Next, we've got this piece with the needle bearing and the washer for it. So again, just put a little bit of oil on this needle bearing. Just a light coat of oil around here. All right, so you've got the bolt, the needle bearing goes on next, followed by the washer, and that just sits right there. Next, we're going to put on the clutch hub. So just make sure that that needle bearing stays in place when you put this clutch hub on. And then the clutch hub spring bolts will go on next. These don't tighten down much, only 80 inch-pounds, which comes out to about 6.6 foot-pounds, so it's not much at all. So be really careful when you put these in. All right, so we've got these all snugged down, not tightened yet, but snugged down, so now we can do 6.6 foot-pounds, crisscross pattern. All right, so the last thing to do on the clutch, reinstall the clutch cover. There is a rubber O-ring that's a replacement part. So replace that, give it a little hit of oil, make sure this is all good and clean before you put it back on. The bolts, there's 6 of them. There's only one long bolt here, and that goes in the obvious place where you can see the longer ones needed. Okay, so we'll crisscross these down to spec, which on this is 106 inch-pounds, so 8.8 foot-pounds, not much. All right, now we're gonna install the water pump impeller. So you've got the impeller, and the impeller bolt is torqued to 89 inch-pounds, which is only 7.4 foot-pounds. Install the gasket, which this is a replacement part, and you can probably see why. It gets a little corrosion on it. Okay, and then the cover. There is a dowel pin you gotta line up right there. Make sure that goes in. So for these three short ones, they're the same as the impeller bolt, 89 inch-pounds, 7.4 foot-pounds. And we're actually gonna put those in first. And this long bolt up here, 106 inch-pounds, so 8.8 foot-pounds. All right, and the very last one is your water pump drain bolt. Just double check the torque on that. Probably haven't touched it since you drained it. It's 5.1 foot-pounds, so 62 inch-pounds is what the torque spec says, but that's 5.1 inch-pounds. So just check that, because you don't want to fill it up and only have it on there finger loose and the whole thing drains out. All right, oil filter goes back in. This one looks a little bit dirty, but I actually had just changed the oil when I discovered this problem, so this only had about 10 minutes of oil run through it. It's just been soaked in, but go ahead and replace that. Obviously, get a new one. Spring goes in, and then the cap goes on. Don't forget to replace the O-ring in there. 2 bolts, short one on the bottom, long one on the top. And these are 106 inch-pounds still, so 8.8 foot-pounds. Okay, we're back over on the left side of the case. This is one that's easily overlooked and easy to forget. This is part of the oil system, so when you're doing the oil, if you haven't reinstalled this, do not forget it. You can go ahead and clean this screen off. I got a little bit of leftover stuff there, but it's not a big deal. Just hit this with a good solvent, clean it out. Just your oil screen. It pops in right here. And this bolt goes on, and this torques down to 89 inch-pounds, so 7.4 foot-pounds. Just make sure it seats all the way in there like that. There's 2 O-rings on there that are replacement parts. You have noticed I haven't put on these top engine mounts yet, and here's why. This part of the throttle body, this spacer here, the AC that goes on, if you have those motor mounts, it's really hard to get into this bolt right here. So I waited, and that's why I haven't put on these top motor mounts, and why I haven't torqued down any of the motor mounts yet. I've really been waiting to get to this point. So now we're gonna go ahead and install that, get that out of the way, and then we can go ahead and ratchet down and torque down our motor mounts. All right, so we got two different bolts for this. They're the same, a little bit of Loctite on there. This bracket though goes on the right side as you're looking from the back towards the engine. Oops. Make sure you get this on the right way. You'll notice at the top, if it doesn't line up, you'll have that space there. So just make sure it goes on the right way. And these torque to 89 inch-pounds, so 7.4 foot-pounds. All right, so now we're ready to finish installing the motor mounts and get these torqued down. So this carry-through bolt that goes through the swing arm and through the motor torques to 73.8 foot-pounds. Up here you've got your upper motor mounts, and they do have a nut on the back, but it's kind of hard to tell. They're bracketed in, so you don't actually have to hold pressure on the back. You can simply just torque down this piece here and it'll hold in place. And this goes up around on the inside of that. So this torques to 37 foot-pounds. And then these upper bolts torque to 22 foot-pounds. And on the middle engine bracket, these carry through and they have a nut on the other side, so you do have to keep pressure on one side while you're torquing them down. This one's 37, these are 22. And then your final one down here on the bottom, same thing, you gotta hold pressure on this one while you torque the other side. And those torque to 37 foot-pounds. So go ahead and do that now, get them all torqued down, and then we'll move on to the next part. All right, so now we're gonna install the Kickstarter. So a couple things. This is called the Boss, then you've got your Kickstarter itself. So clean and re-grease this. This oil seal here is a replacement part. Be sure to re-grease that. And then I re-grease this as well. So when installing it, you've got this flat part here, which should face out towards you. Match up with this flat part here. So this takes a little bit of pressure. There we go. Just apply some pressure till that's in there. And you can see how it should turn, just like when it's installed on the bike. Okay, next, got this little ball bearing. It's called the oil seal ball. So drop that in right here, followed by your spring. Then you've got this hex screw that goes in with that. So once you get that in, take an Allen key and tighten that down. Okay, once that's tight, this detent screw here on the side. All right, once that's done, the detent screw goes here into the side. Don't put it on too tight yet. And now we can put the Kickstarter on. Oops. Make sure you get the alignment. There we go. Make sure you get the alignment right. You've got this mark. I guess you can't see it. Got this mark here. Make sure that that's parallel with this here, and that'll be the right alignment mark for that. And finally, you take your bolt and washer and install that in to hold it in place. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for the engine reinstall. That's all I'm going to cover. That's all the main stuff. Don't forget to hook up your clutch cable. The reason I'm not going to do that is because this bike, some of the DFI stuff, you know, all the fuel injection and all that has to go in before I put in the clutch cable that actually goes in on top of all that. So I may film that later on, but one thing not to forget, another reason I haven't filmed putting the shifter back on, I'm not going to put that in this video, is because some of the DFI stuff on that as well has to do with the shift drum, and I have to put that on first. So I'm going to at least skip through all the DFI stuff and then maybe come back to those last couple things. But in terms of the DFI, you know, just make sure the connectors go where they're supposed to, and worst case scenario, look up your service manual online. That'll take way too long to add into this video for me to go through all that on this bike. So there are videos, go find those videos on the DFI if you want, or just look at the service manual. Monsterbike.eu, that's a great resource for all these service manuals, all the torque specs, everything you can think of for these motors. For each individual make, model, and year of dirt bike, they pretty much got it.